All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you all are well. Today's City Council meeting, we confirmed several leaders to the Board of Ethics, the Police Board, and Human Resources Board. Sarah Jen, the Honorable Judge Bernetta Bush will fill the 2 vacancies on the Board of Ethics. Claudia Badeo, Justin Terry, and Catherine Lisp will join the Police Board. And Abby Wasebio, and Dominique Jordan will join the Human Resources Board. Lori Dittman will become the chair of the Human Resources Board. Congratulations to each of them for their respective appointments, and I'm thanking them in advance for their leadership and their commitment to the city of Chicago. Also, in today's council, we adopted a number of resolutions honoring Women's Veterans Day in Chicago, recognizing the brave women of the U.S. Armed Forces who contribute so much to our communities. Their sacrifice and their service is certainly beyond the military, and we're grateful for all of our women who serve, not only just protecting our freedom here, but making sure that freedom abroad is something that can be realized. Pride Month, so happy Pride Month to everyone. Designated a time in our city and nation where we celebrate the resilience and joy of the LGBTQ+ community, but also making sure that we are reaffirming as a city the fact that we are inclusive and the most loving city in the world. And finally, we adopted a resolution to honor the life of Marion Robinson, the beloved South Side resident who raised the first Black woman to ever serve as the First Lady of this country, Michelle Obama. We are so grateful for Mrs. Robinson's legacy as a true Chicagoan, a graceful woman, an incredible, intelligent woman, and of course will always be beloved as the first grandmother of this country. So may she rest in peace, and our thoughts and prayers, of course, will always be with the Obama and Robinson family. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Today, the City Council agreed to pay $50 million to 4 men who were wrongfully accused of a 1995 double murder. How is that an appropriate use of taxpayer funds when it seems that those settlements come one after another without any significant reform of the police department, at least measured by the progress of the consent decree?
Well, the reform is something that is ongoing. Constitutional policing is something that we have to have. As far as what happened when I was in high school, that's the problem. Things were unchecked. Many Black men have been falsely accused and, have spent, their lives in prison for a crime they did not commit. Unfortunately, this is the experience of many Black men who, whether they get accused of a crime or they are reduced to some sort of caricature. So there is a lot of work that obviously has to be done to reform our police department, but keep in mind the cases that we are settling are the direct result of what previous administrations ignored.
Turning to the efforts to care for the migrants coming to Chicago from the southern border, the city began asking families with children to leave city shelters this week. Is that what the city should be doing, and does it live up to the values of Chicago as a welcoming city, as you've expressed?
Well, our values are front and center. In fact, many people around the country and the globe have seen our motto and how we have provided care in this moment. As you know, I've worked hard to bring the state, the county, and the federal government together to respond to this mission. It is an unsustainable mission because we don't have support from Congress. Congress, of course, refuses to respond to President Biden's leadership, and they refuse to enact real substantive immigration reform policy, because that's really what we need. But you have Trump Republicans that are more interested in obeying a convicted convict, a felon. As far as our 60-day policy, just keep this in mind. We had 15,000 people who were in shelter. We are now at around 6,800 people who are in shelter. The families whose 60 days expire, they can come back if there are beds. 55% of them do. About 45% of them move on. So yes, we are still living up to our values. We are providing care in a way that nowhere else in the country you're seeing, particularly a mission that requires a federal response.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Federal prosecutors say that ex-alderman Ed Burke should serve 10 years in prison for racketeering, bribery, and attempted extortion. I'm wondering if you think that Burke should serve out the entirety of that sentence if the judge.
It's unfortunate that we have, an alderman of his caliber and stature, violate the trust of people. That decision will be in the hands of the courts.
In their sentencing recommendation, prosecutors wrote, quote, "There are still those who lurk in the bowels of city government and walk its corridors of power who are still strong allies of Burke, and that it would be naive to think that there's anything stopping Burke from engaging in the same type of conduct in the future," and in their argument for putting him behind bars. I'm wondering if you agree with that description of City Hall.
Well, that description sounds like a very ominous story time book, by the way. The lurking in bowels, well, that's a very very interesting combination. As far as the extension of the alderman's relationships, I think it's very clear that his relationships are far and wide. There's a new day in the city of Chicago, though, right? For the first time in the history of the city of Chicago, you actually have a mayor that was elected with no ties to the political machine. We have the most diverse city council, the most diverse cabinet that we've seen. Look, previous administrations turned a blind eye to many bad and horrific things that happened in city government. We're not doing that. We're taking these challenges head on, and I'm confident that as we work to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, that people will continue to catch wind of the new day that's in the city of Chicago, and they're going to fully embrace what we've put forth over the last year.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Are you opposed to giving the Board of Ethics the ability to fine and suspend lobbyists who donate to a mayor's campaign? And do you want those same restrictions extended to alderpersons?
Well, as you know, that there's a full, comprehensive ethics package that Chairman Martin has. I think the people of Chicago would like to see that full package. What we've said all along, that if you want to eliminate corruption in government, we certainly should work to make sure that rules apply to anyone who has been given the trust of the public. I actually believe that the best way to ensure parity and to remove, the dollars, if you will, or the interest of a handful of people out of politics is through public financing of campaigns. I support that. And I believe it should apply to every single level of government. If we really are interested in transforming how politics are done in the city of Chicago, let's all call for public financing.
The Board of Ethics has warned that not passing these, penalties to give them this enforcement power, they would view it as, rolling back 13 years of ethics reform. Why not maybe move forward this first step of just codifying that executive order and then working on more expansions as well? Because
the people of Chicago want to see the full package. Now, look, we've already worked with the chairman on some of these issues. He's released a couple of ethic reforms that we have worked with him to pass, but there are people who have questions, right? I mean, I think a very fair question is, you have labor groups, for instance, that pour thousands of dollars into campaigns. Again, if people are concerned about unfettered access that's handed to a handful of people, let's implement public financing. We can do that now. And people will have my full support to do that if they're really serious about really reform. And I challenge the ethics boards to join me in this effort. Call for public financing. Let's lead the way for the city, for the entire country, of how do we eliminate these proclivities to the lurking in the bowels of City Hall that could cause corruption. How's that for story time?
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Can you talk, please, about what happened between, or the discussion that came about between the city attorneys and the protesters about being in sight and sound of the convention? Was there an agreement on where those protesters might be?
Well, what needed to happen, and our Chief Operation Officer, John Robertson, is here, and he can speak to it in more detail if necessary, but the parameters have to be established first. So the Secret Service, working with local law enforcement, had to establish the parameters. And then at that point, now decisions can be made of how those parameters have to be secure to keep people safe, but of course allow for the full participation of those who will be expressing their fundamental right to protest. And so it wasn't so much a sort of a conversation or agreement. We just had to make sure that the boundaries and the parameters set forth by the Secret Service were actually established.
And so has a decision been made where they will be? Can you talk about that?
Well, not at this time. As these parameters are being established, Sean, unless you want to add anything else to it. Once those are established, then those permits will be available for people to apply to work within the parameters that have been established by the Secret Service as well as our local law enforcement.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Alderman Moore DNP'd two pretty uncontroversial ordinances from Alderman Laspada today and said it was in retaliation for Alderman Laspada's own DNP on ShotSpotter legislation. Do you think that is an appropriate way to govern, and why?
Could you repeat? Could you offer your statement before your question? Who retaliated against whom?
Yeah,
Just trying to keep up with all this drama around here. Start over here. It's going to be a great story time tonight when I go home and when my kids ask me, how was City Hall?
Always
So
a good
just
time.
try that one more time.
Yeah, Alderman Moore DNP'd two different ordinances from Alderman Laspada relating to housing in his ward, and said that it was in retaliation for...
So he said it was in retaliation.
Yeah.
Okay, and what are you asking me?
Do you think that's appropriate?
Should people be retaliating against one another? I mean, the preference is that we figure out how to work together, and look, over this past year, we've done that. Whether it's eliminating the sub-minimum wage, passing the most substantive paid time off ordinance of a large city, the largest bond deal for economic housing development in the history of Chicago. There's so many countless examples of how, we have worked together. My encouragement to the city council is to find ways in which we can work together and not take the things that people may be in a disagreement with personally.
And Riot Fest is moving out of Chicago, citing problems working with the Park District. Do you view this as a loss for the city, and how do you think festivals in neighborhood parks should be approached? Well,
first of all, we have a great scene in Chicago for festivals, right? We continue to grow our footprint, whether it's neighborhood festivals or even the larger ones that are downtown. We're looking forward to Lollapalooza and other big events that we're going to have in the city of Chicago. Look, I'm still gathering information from my team, my leadership team, to understand where there may have been a communications breakdown, and like I've done most things or all things in this city, we'll figure out where those disconnects are, and find opportunities where we can either build, mend, or create.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
In response earlier this week to Alderman Hopkins saying he was going to attempt to establish an 8 p.m. curfew downtown, you've said publicly that studies indicate that curfews for minors are unsuccessful and don't work to curb crime. I'm curious why your administration hasn't acted to repeal the 6 p.m. curfew for youth at Millennium and Maggie Daley Park if you oppose the idea of implementing youth curfews.
It's an ongoing conversation. That's all. It's an ongoing conversation. And I'm about what works. Look, I know there's been a lot of focus around what time people should go to bed. What I'm doing is I'm having conversations, and we're actually building an operation where we create opportunities for our young people to have safe spaces where they can grow and learn and discover their purpose, right? And that's why we created 28,000 positions for summer youth employment. We just added an additional $600,000 for community-based organizations that provide direct services for young people to continue to activate young people. But again, like every single measure that I inherited, if you don't know by now, you should know that I'm quite deliberate in making decisions, and I will continue to do that.
So we've heard those discussions are no longer happening with the Park District and with DK. So is that true, or can we see some change here in the future?
Sure, maybe they're happening in the bowels of City Hall. Those conversations are still going. All right, thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
Does your administration still stand behind the appointment of Angel Ruby Navarro to the CCPSA, and do you believe commissioners to that body should be members of or work for sitting alder people? Because
Look, I understand that there's been, thank you for that question, by the way. Look, I know that there's been concerns about, an individual's ability to be a neutral arbiter of decisions because they are, part of an automatic team. I don't believe that is a disqualifying aspect for someone's ability to actually lead. Again, these are conversations that we will continue to have so that we can alleviate, whatever trepidation someone might have.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
We know that summer violence isn't going to immediately disappear, but do you believe that the performance so far, the numbers that you're seeing, are encouraging enough, or do there have to be some more fine-tuning as we have these violent weekends erupt again and again?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, this goes back to maybe perhaps a question around curfew. Look, I know that there are people who are concerned about community safety. I am as well. I've made that, point repeatedly. The city of Chicago, has grieved so often that unfortunately in some cases there's almost sometimes a normalization of, these violent moments or even experiences. But look, since I've been in office, I've made it very clear that unlike other administrations who've intentionally disinvested in our communities, and perhaps out of, disdain or perhaps even hatred for particular groups of people, I'm doing the opposite. I'm actually investing in people because I love people. That is the hallmark of our administration. Every time we show up for the people of Chicago, we show up because we love the people of the city of Chicago. And as a result of those investments, we've seen in the most violent beats in the city of Chicago, 35 most violent beats, it's a 25% reduction in homicides, 21% reduction in shootings. The city as a whole, as of last Thursday, we'll see what this week entails. We've seen a 17% reduction in homicides and a considerable reduction in shootings. Now, to the second part or the third part of your question, is there still work to be done? Absolutely. As long as there are shootings and homicides in the city of Chicago or anywhere in this country for that matter, no one should be patting themselves on the back. But the fact of the matter is the city of Chicago is not the most violent city in the world. We're not even in the top 20. And comparatively to other administrations, what my administration has experienced in this first year, significant reduction in homicides and shootings. And that has a lot to do with the hard work, of course, that we are putting forward to invest in people, but it also has to do with the work that law enforcement is doing. I made a commitment to hire 200 more detectives over the course of my first term. We have hired over 100. We are well on our way to meet that goal by the end of this year. But in order to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, we have to continue to show up for the people of Chicago and invest in them. So yes, am I optimistic about what we have seen so far in the trends? Absolutely. Am I satisfied? No.
What signs are you seeing that the increased participation of the community groups is paying off?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, I'm grateful that our Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, Gary Gatewood, has done an absolute incredible job organizing community groups, block clubs, who are coming together to clean up vacant lots, to board up vacant buildings. We announced, I believe it was I don't know if it was last month or 2 months ago in City Council, where vacant lots in the 20th, 24th Ward and the 9th Ward, these are vacant lots that we are turning over to community developers to build homes, right? And these lots will be available for $1. It's going to put families in homes in North Lawndale and Inglewood and Roseland. That's a step in the direction that the people of Chicago have been longing for, particularly Black Chicago, right? Because we know that other administrations have been very hostile towards Black existence in this city, whether it's the shuttering of schools, public housing, creating these deserts. Quite frankly, these were policy decisions, whether it's selling off the Skyway, the parking meter, the Bad Bears deal. We owe $600 million on a building that there's no public benefit for. I mean, taking airports in the middle of the night, raiding pensions. Previous administrations have been quite raggedy. We're cleaning up the bowels of the city council, City Hall. We're just going to stay there for a few more minutes. You started it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before I launch into my incredibly quick and few questions, I believe I speak for the entire City Hall press corps as well as the Deep South press corps in thanking you and Alderman Mosley for getting that ceiling painted so we don't have any more chips falling on us. on
was the
and
least we
behind
can
the
do.
riser.
Yes, he's with
I
you.
also want to put you on notice that you can't run from our questions today because we got Marianne Ahern in the house.
All right.
She'll get Christy Love with it, point her little mic at you and say, "Freeze, sugar, you under news arrest." So anyway, first question. So you've been getting the Casper the Unfriendly Ghost treatment lately, as in a lot of booing. What have you learned from that?
What do you mean? What do you mean, booing?
The boos you got from anywhere from the House Festival to that event over on the West Side where Danny Davis introduced you and everybody was visibly going boo.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear that.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Well, now that we've told you that that happened, it was very audible on YouTube.
Okay.
What would you learn from that, or what do you think you should learn from that?
I'm the mayor of Chicago. If I wake up in the morning and no one's mad at me, it means I'm no longer mayor.
Well, it seems like you're mad.
Okay, you get one more,
Okay.
Mark. All right.
Just one more? Okay.
Yes.
So, you all, I believe, have passed a resolution for $500,000 to study reparations. There is a petition drive to collect petition signatures for a November 5th ballot initiative that would establish reparations for descendants of those who were in chattel slavery, who were freed by the 13th Amendment. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, not only did we put forth $500,000 for this commission, we're staffing it. I support and believe in reparations, period. Descendants of slaves. Mark, I'm going to answer your question. Mark, you got to give me a chance to answer the question, okay? All right, let's keep some decorum here a little bit. I support reparations, right? It's going to take the full city council vote to be able to move on an agenda of what reparations should look like, right? Me supporting reparations, I need support of the city council. We also get to take this measure to the community, to people, to talk about not just the harm, but what does that repair look like? Now, here's what we're doing in the meantime. A $1.25 billion bond for economic neighborhood housing, particularly in the neighborhoods where disinvestment has taken place. $250 million to address the unhoused, making sure that we're raising the wages of black folks in particular, but black and brown women. I mean, with the strength of my office, we have demonstrated unequivocally our love for black people. And this reparations commission gives us an opportunity to expand that love beyond the fifth floor, because I'm going to need the full city council to support whatever measures we come up with to make sure that we repair the harm that has been done by, of course, colonization, not just here in this country, but globally. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor. I had a different question. I think, would you like me to continue asking questions?
Mark, we have moved on, okay?
This county resolution, look, you need to hear this. This county resolution talks about removing or ending property tax for any county resident who's a descendant of chattel slavery.
Thank you, Mark. I've answered your question.
No, you didn't answer.
Please, Mr. Craig Wall.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
I had a different referendum-related question. There was a little news conference during City Council where there is petitions being gathered to put on the November ballot a referendum that would allow for the recall of the mayor of Chicago. Could you give me your reaction to that, and would you have any concern that if that passed, that there would ever be a referendum effort against you?
I'm going to be the mayor to finish this term out, 2027, and in 2047, I'll retire.
Could I get a serious answer?
Can I get a serious question?
I'm just asking you to respond to something that happened
And
here at City Hall.
I just answered it. I will be the mayor of the city of Chicago until 2027 when this term ends, and then I will retire in 2047.
All right. Let me ask you another question. There will be the awkward elephant in the room, and that is about the Sun-Times story last week about your spending of $30,000 from your campaign fund for hair and makeup. Can you respond to that and explain why you think that's an appropriate use of the campaign dollars to what to many people seems like a lot of money?
I think it's always appropriate to make sure that we're investing in small businesses, especially minority-owned, black-owned, women-owned businesses. Our campaign spends money on food. We support Black and brown-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, printing. There are a number of things that my campaign spends dollars on. And I'm so committed to supporting small businesses that even as mayor, just made another announcement of another $35 million available for small businesses. That's important to people, that we lift up, small businesses that, in particular, that don't always get the attention and support that they deserve it. And so we're going to continue to do that as a city, and we'll make sure that, I encourage all of you in this room, support small businesses. Go get your hair and makeup done by Black people in particular. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
We're in a different space with the migrant mission now, as families have left some of the shelters. A number of those have been closed, but there's still a number of costs associated with the migrant mission. The city's website shows that $400 million have been spent so far over the past 2 years or so. But what we don't have from that is sort of a full accounting of where all those dollars have gone. And there's a recent lawsuit that spells out that some of the property owners of these migrant shelters are getting $150,000 a month. So I've heard you say previously that your administration is transparent. If that's the case, why not share that level of detail on the website?
Well, first of all, those numbers that you are calculating are attached to state and federal pass-throughs that allow for this mission to be carried out. The particular spending that we have done around this mission, just city tax dollars, those numbers have to be parsed out. And that's available on the website if you want to, separate those. We have given an accurate account of how dollars have been spent.
That's it? Is there anything that would preclude your administration from sharing that level of detail?
There's no information that has been kept from you. All the information that is available to you of how we have spent on this mission is available to you. Look, you also have to keep in mind, though, that when I took office, we had to renegotiate a number of contracts that I inherited, saving the taxpayers over $200 million just on this mission. Here's the harsh reality. The federal government, the Congress, has to respond to this crisis, and they have not. Here's another way in which we can ask these questions. How long will municipalities be asked to stand up an international crisis that requires a federal response? Every single dollar that has been spent, you can find it on the website. And if you want some more time to dig through those particular appropriation items, perhaps we can have a follow-up conversation to give you some more clarity and understanding so that you can, comprehend how we're actually spending those dollars. But that information is available to you, sir.
Not all of it, though, is, sir. I mean, that's
Can you
the point.
give me a specific example of what's not available?
The Ogden shelter in the West Loop, that's what is spelled out in this lawsuit, that they get $150,000 just for being the property owner per month. Nowhere is that available on the city's spending website. My question, again, is simply, is there anything that would preclude you from including that level of detail? You guys have said you're transparent. Why not show it?
All of the information related to the spending to this mission is available.
Mayor, back to the curfew issue, because
Yeah.
I just want to address Hopkins' specific ordinance.
Yeah.
Basically, he's saying that the police said to him that if they had the ability to go in and break up some of the crowds that have been, the one crowd that caused the assault on that couple in Streeterville earlier, they might have prevented more problems. Is his ordinance appropriate to
Pierce,
boost
can you
public
repeat
safety
that?
in street?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? He said that if the police had the ability to do what?
To break up crowds.
The police don't have the ability to break up crowds?
Well, I'm paraphrasing what Hopkins said to me.
I want to make sure, because I want to make sure I answer your question.
To basically take young people, they want, basically saying the police asked him for this ordinance to
Which police? The superintendent?
Police in that district. So is this an appropriate measure to enhance public safety?
I'm really trying to understand when you say the police asked, and the police need the authority to break up crowds. I'm trying to follow that. So if you're asking me about the curfew, I can give my answer again. I can give you my answer again.
Well, specifically his curfew, moving from.
No, I hear what you're saying.
So
I think, are you asking me what my position is on the curfew?
On
or
his,
are you asking
his
me a
specific
question
ordinance.
about what the police said or
Well,
what the
I'm
police can do?
What he said is he's filing this ordinance because police in that district asked him for it.
For a curfew.
Right.
I see. Okay.
For an earlier curfew.
Okay, I was just saying, because at first you said the police said that they don't have the ability to break up
No.
crowds.
Well,
okay. All right, so now we're clear.
Got it.
You're saying that the police went to him, not my superintendent, but just the police.
Not your superintendent.
All right.
He said police
So,
went to him and asked him for this.
This is about doing what's right and what works. So here's a question, if I can just offer one. If a young person has to be accompanied by an adult, what is the definition of an adult? Is it an 18-year-old? Is it a 19-year-old? Is it a 21-year-old? These are just reasonable questions. And, if a child is downtown at 8:01 with an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old friend, does that count as the accompaniment? Here's what we are looking to do in the city of Chicago. We're working to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. One of the ways in which you can actually activate safer communities is by giving things and giving people something to do that's meaningful. Creating safe spaces all over the city of Chicago. That's the work. And so I understand what Alderman Hopkins' concerns are. I have them as well. But it's important that whatever we do as a city, it has to be something that is effective and that it works and that we can actually implement it and that it's constitutional. And thank you for being patient. I just wanted to understand. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking my question.
Of course.
There's been some recent comments made related to Bally's, and so I was hoping you could just clarify.
Sure, yeah.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about where you stand with the progress of the project as well as the financing, and then also if you expect that the $200 million per year for police and fire pensions will still come to fruition when the project is completed.
Yeah, so thank you. That's a comprehensive question, and I'm happy to answer it. So let's just start with the police and fire pensions, right? Look, the General Assembly attached, this industry as a revenue source to pay for police and fire pensions, right? Now, there are better signs of revenue that Bally's has received, and so those are good signs, right? As far as just being absolutely clear, because perhaps it was just a dynamic of just interpretation. What I said was that I've inherited a number of deals that my team has had to work through, much like O'Hare Airport. So this situation is no different. I'm confident in my team's ability to work through this process, and that's all I was simply saying, is that there's still more work to be done. And until that work is complete, that it would be, somewhat a miscalculation to make any speculation beyond that. Again, our Chief Operations Officer, John Robertson, has done an amazing job working with a variety of industry in this city. I think the good news is that there's clearly an opportunity for the city to continue to expand its business base, as tourism continues to go up. I believe we broke a record last year with hotel rooms that were booked. 44,000 hotel rooms were booked, $39 million in revenue. So those are all good indications. I guess the only thing that I struggle with a little bit, this is more personal, is that if my grandfather were alive and he knew that I was promoting gambling and marijuana, he probably would not be at my next inauguration. But there are good indications that we're moving in the right direction. But there's a lot of work to be done still.
What is that work? What is your team negotiating?
It's a variety of things. It's not just about remediation of space, of making sure that the timeline and the budget is in agreement or in alignment. And so much like what we've done with other deals that we inherited that did not quite meet the moment of where we are today versus when that agreement was initially established, I'm confident in my team's ability to continue to work through that process.
This week, Hi, Mayor, the CTU is going to hold its first public negotiating session. Will that be advantageous for the city?
Well, look, I mean, it's a new day for Chicago, and thank you for that question. You know, the Chicago Public Schools and Labor doing an open meeting so that the public can actually see. In fact, not only is it advantageous, it's something I'm encouraging. The Chicago Teachers Union, our labor folks who provide the service, Chicago Public Schools, and the mayor's office, we're all working together to come up with solutions to make sure that the vision that I have for our public school system in Chicago comes to fruition. It's a lot of work. These have been, very stiff and contentious relationships over the course of decades in this city. So these are new practices that are being developed here, and as the muscle continues to build for a better, stronger, safer Chicago, what better way to demonstrate that work by working hard to make sure that we have a school district that the people of Chicago can be proud of.
And also back to the hair and makeup.
Okay, all right.
There were others that also received the services that were expensed to your campaign. Can you give us more on who they were and why? And how do you react to those election lawyers who say it is not a good use of campaign money?
Look, if you're asking me to respond to someone's opinion, I'm not going to do that, right? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. You know, if they don't believe it's a good use to support small businesses, black and brown businesses, that's something that they have to deal with when they meet their maker. As far as I'm concerned, it's always a good practice to make sure that we are promoting small businesses, particularly minority-owned businesses, with a variety of services, whether it's spaces that we utilize, whether it's vendors that we utilize for food or printing or any other aspect that's important to, our overall presentation. I guess there just is a different perspective that I guess whoever these election attorneys are, I don't know any of them that you're referring to, but I always believe it's a good idea to support and invest in small businesses.
And who else is being billed? Because your spokesman said associates. It's more than you.
Yeah, well, again, I think the most important thing here is that, we are in a position as a political committee to make sure that whomever we are investing in, whether they are providing hair, makeup, food, or any other service to our campaign, that we are working within the framework of the law, and I will continue to do that.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Earlier this month, President Joe Biden enacted stricter rules at the border. Some people have decried it. Others have supported it. You're sort of straight down the middle. Do you or Chief of Staff Pacione Zayas believe this will put us in the clear of the deluge that some were expecting this summer?
Look, here's the thing. President Biden has put forth a comprehensive immigration reform package that passed the Senate. It was blocked in the House because you have Trump Republicans that were forced and told to obey him. Look, we do need comprehensive immigration reform. We do. As far as how the governor of Texas is going to behave, the last I checked, he's not responding or working to do anything to be in coordination with the Biden administration, certainly not with mayors across this country. He's still sending buses. He's not sending them to Chicago. And just for the record, there has not been one bus that has arrived in the city of Chicago since December. And we are still providing the services that are necessary to respond to this mission. I wish the governor of Texas, I wish he had a heart. I don't know, maybe he needs to visit the Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's so disturbing that he is unwilling to coordinate with mayors across the city. Why is he only sending them to Chicago and New York? I mean, I think everybody in this room knows why he's doing that. It's unconscionable. It's wicked. So, I don't know if whatever Congress or DC does, if that's going to have some sort of impact on how Governor Abbott behaves.
Okay, so I'll take you're not sure if it's going to have us escape.
I mean, look, it's not even so much escape. You got to talk to Governor Abbott about that, right? Because he doesn't have to send the buses just to Chicago. Everybody knows there's a crisis there's a crisis in this country, and not just in this world, right? Of global population shift because of bad policies that have disrupted these sovereign states. If I had the ability to circle in the psyche of Governor Abbott, maybe it would be chapter 2 in this saga or short story that we're writing in the midst of this press conference.
Okay, I'll switch gears here. I know you're a fan of active transportation. I am looking at a push last year that Lime scooters had to be allowed to have rentable scooters on the 606 and on the Lakefront Trail. Right now, they're prohibited. Some believe there's an equity argument saying that those who can't afford to own their own electric scooter, because if you own it, you can ride up and down the 606 and Lakefront Trail all you want. But if you're renting, you're not allowed to. Is there an equity argument to allow rentable scooters for people who want to commute on safe paths like the 606 or the Lakefront Trail?
There might be. We'll soon have an equity chief in my administration again. That's something that we're happy to explore and look into.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon.
I understand you oppose Alderman Martin's ethics ordinance on the grounds of it not including other elected officials, but Martin characterized those concerns as 11th hour requests that were only brought forth last week. Do you find his skepticism reasonable, and are you saying you would support the measure if it just added alderman, the treasurer, the clerk?
Well, we've had multiple conversations with Alderman Martin, multiple conversations. As you know, that there have been at least a couple of the ethics measures that he has put forward that have passed. We don't do anything hastily, but we certainly don't do anything. We don't procrastinate. And I think it's a mischaracterization of how you're framing the challenge that we have with this particular ordinance. All we're just saying is that there are other questions that people have, right? It's not just me, that there are a number of other council members that want to see his full, comprehensive ethics package. What I've said, if it's about eliminating the propensity of corruption in government, let's pass public financing so that we level the playing field for every single office seeker, and that we eliminate and reduce the barriers to having representation. If that is the goal, let's have a real substantive conversation about how we can have an effort statewide, where whether you're running for a state's attorney, governor, school board, that we have public financing instituted or implemented within that infrastructure. And then now we have a situation where you create more parity and equity.
Yeah, it's the office seeker part I wanted to just be absolutely clear on. Because in addition to the mayor, there's alderman, treasurer. So that's what you want the expansion to be.
What I'm saying is public financing is the answer. That's what I'm saying. That public financing is the answer. The goal is to eliminate the proclivity of corruption. That's the goal. And I believe if you were to talk to the Chair Martin, he would agree with that. Put forth the full comprehensive ethics package that he has. Like let everybody see that. Let's have community hearings on this. Let's do community organizing around it. I believe it's a great way for the city of Chicago to display and show how we're moving in a different direction for this city. We can set an example for the country. So that's the goal, is to eliminate or at least reduce again the propensity to be stuffed into a particular ideological frame because of who's financing you. Look, you won't get a disagreement from me, right? There's an alder that's on trial right now. We've had, mayors who've had millions and millions and millions of their own dollars to be able to run for office, while, promulgating, horrific, policies on people. And it's been very hard to fight back. And I've been a part of those efforts. All of you in this room know where I started as an organizer. Not getting my hair cut every week either at that time.
On the subject of migrant families of school-age children now being subject to the 60-day policy, will CPS students have to re-enroll in different schools for the most part, and how will their education not be disrupted?
Yeah, well, look, if there are beds that are available, they'll stay where they are. But look, the ultimate goal is this, you all. It's resettlement. These are temporary shelters. Temporary shelters. I hope you all understand in this room that the standard is not shelter in perpetuity. That's not the standard. The standard and the expectation is that people can actually live sustainable, fruitful lives in Chicago or anywhere else in America if they so choose. And so we've created a policy, that provides us with structure in the event, as was asked earlier by your colleague, if the governor of Texas decides to continue on his diabolical rage, that there are limitations to what we are able to do as a city. I've appropriated $150 million. The state is kicked in, thank God. I mean, that vote was close in the House, 60 votes, it was close, but we got it done. And I'm grateful that the governor, was committed to standing up 2,200 beds. He made that commitment. President Preckwinkle made a commitment, fulfilled it. But there are limitations to what we can do, you all. Look, I wish we didn't have anyone unhoused in this city. That's why we were fighting so hard for Bring Chicago Home. And the very people, of course, who have expressed disdain towards my administration stopped us from having the revenue to address exactly what you're talking about. Look, people can't have it both ways. You can't say it's a problem, then we put forth a solution. You don't want to support that solution. These families have travailed through very difficult circumstances, to say the least. And there are families in this city who have had to endure difficult circumstances from previous administrations that administer some of the most draconian, horrific policies on particularly black and brown people in this city. And we're working to address it, whether it's bond, $250 million for the unhoused. We have a brand new Cindy Soto, who is our chief homelessness officer, who's working to create a unified system. We are literally building systems that never existed in the city of Chicago. It's a great day to be in Chicago, no matter how difficult it is. And as Craig indicated earlier, even with all of those challenges, homicides are going down, shootings are going down, investments are going up. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we're clearly doing it. Thank you for that question, though.
Hey, Mayor, on this ethics ordinance, so you're calling for public financing of elections. You've been mayor for over a year now. Can you point to anything you've done in the last year to advocate for that, to organize around it, to call for hearings like you're doing now? Why bring this up now instead of previously?
Why not now? I mean, look, I know people they want me to hurry up and do everything. I understand. Look, there's been a lot of pain in this city for 40 years, 37 years in particular, since Mayor Harold Washington was taken away from us. Whether it's, reopening mental health clinics and providing behavioral health services, whether it's coming up with an alternative response to 911 to respond to the mental health crisis, doubling our support for young people in youth employment. I've made it very clear from the very beginning that people are interested in working to make sure that we have an ethics package in totality that can get to the root of what we're ultimately trying to eradicate. I'm open for that.
So the reason Alderman Martin says this this specific ordinance was introduced is because the Board of Ethics says it cannot enforce that the executive order, and that's why it has to be codified. That's why it's solely limited to the mayor, because it's just mimicking that executive order. Are you saying that no ethics ordinance, nothing should be addressed unless it's a comprehensive package?
I'm saying that why are we nibbling around the edges? I'm just saying, look, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it all done at once. We've already passed measures that Alderman Martin has put forward. But look, if the goal is to eradicate the proclivity of corruption, then let's get at that. Let's get at it. So yes, here it is. Let's declare it again. Let's all work together for public financing. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I'm open for it. Are there any other questions? All right.
Martin introduced an ordinance today that would allow an opt-in for public financing for people to tap into that. And Alderman Urban sent out 2 rules. It sounds like you would support that ordinance.
What I'm saying is there's an opportunity for us to do something unique in the city of Chicago. There is. But it has to be a part of a larger conversation about how we do that collectively. Thank you all very much.